And we are live, everybody. NBA Strategy Show is here. We're kicking off our first full week of the NBA season because we got started on Tuesday of last week. I'm Josh Engleman, and I'm here to break down two different slates. We have a 9-game slate on DraftKings. They dropped the 2 10 o'clock games tonight. So everything on DK locks from 7 until 8:30. Which I think is kind of cool, especially on an NFL day. Shame it's an NFL day. FanDuel did not do any of that stuff. We've got all 11 games on FanDuel. So you've got 9 games between 7 and 8:30. You take a 90-minute break, and then you get the late night hammers, Lakers, Suns, and Blazers, Kings. So that's where we stand for right now. Fun weekend. Didn't get me anywhere in the DFS space, but betting was more than okay. You can check out my betting package on Tails at OddsShopper, by the way. But we got a lot to talk about, a lot of games to break down. I can't really mess around too much on this show. We kind of have to keep the pace going. I have DraftKings ownership. I don't have FanDuel ownership yet, but I do have DK ownership. And then one thing I want to do before we get started, we got the first official video with our new puppy and his eyes open. So we're going to be getting a puppy in December. And where'd he go? There he is. So that right there is the new puppy coming in here. Took a screenshot quickly, finally got the eyes open. So this guy's going to be joining the old Engleman household. Like first or second week of December. Oh, that little guy. Oh, a cute face. I'm excited for this little dude. Name? You guys want to know it? Thanks, Jake. The name of this puppy will be Keith. I love it so much. So this is Puppy Keith. You guys will meet him soon enough, but he will not be making it to our house until like the second week of December. We got to go to Tennessee to pick him up. So shout out to Keith. Congrats on opening your eyes. Now, I think it's time to talk a little bit about basketball, shall we? So hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. We'll talk about like the final day of the tip-off promo. We got a lot going on. Lots of basketball to talk about. And we are going to start that off. Indiana Pacers. 6.5 point underdogs in Orlando. 224 total. In terms of the line, I like the Pacers. So if you're looking to bet on this game, I do prefer the Pacers side of this one. I did get some DMs potentially about... Nope. Not about ownership. It's just about stupid Adam messaging me about yesterday. So as we look at this one, it's a little bit easier because of the ownership to talk about the DraftKings side, but I'll have no problem talking about the FanDuel side either. Let me get that injury report pulled up as well. Lots of open tabs this morning. Lots of open tabs. So Pacers are on the back-to-back. They don't have their injury report out. John Isaac is questionable for the Magic. Don't think that's going to matter all that much. We do have a little bit of ownership coming in on the Indiana side. That is essentially just Miles Turner, Andrew Nembhard, and TJ McConnell. If you're asking me, I probably wouldn't be getting to all that much of this Pacers team to begin with. I don't really see it, if I'm being honest. I like the Orlando side much more on the DraftKings side than I do the Indiana side. If I'm just looking at it in general, I have no real interest in Andrew Nembhard if he's getting any ownership love. I certainly don't have any real, like, on-purpose interest in TJ McConnell. I don't think the Pacers look very good on DraftKings. If I'm going to get to somebody, it's probably Turner. But we're going to name 25 centers by the time we're done this show. And I don't really see a path where Turner's like a guy I'm going crazy for. As I see it, I don't really expect to have much of Indiana. We're talking about a pace down spot for the Pacers. We're talking about a very difficult defensive matchup for the Pacers. On a slate this size, I don't have much more to say for Indiana. FanDuel, they look a little bit better. I think you can make a real good case for $7,700 Pascal Siakam on FanDuel. That's probably it. I think Nembhard looks a little bit better on FanDuel just because of the way the positions work. I just don't think that you're prioritizing. I don't think you're prioritizing the Indiana Pacers today. I just don't see the point. Orlando, on the other hand, to me is very different. $5,400 for Jalen Suggs is too cheap. He's $700 more expensive on the FanDuel end. He's pulling the most ownership on DraftKings as of right now. I think it's pretty clear on DK that Jalen Suggs is your best option. He is my most optimal coming out of my sim. I assume I'll be talking about him in DraftKings Contenders, which will come out a little bit after this. For those that don't know, I put out my top 5 plays on DraftKings in a video on YouTube every day throughout the week, and I break down each one of those 5 guys. That video goes up after the strategy show. I post the same thing for FanDuel on Twitter. It's not a video, it's just the visual experience. But whether it's DraftKings or FanDuel, I have a little something for you guys somewhere. Yeah, that Dwayne Wade statue is next level terrible. It's if a $1 billion industry can't commission a statue that looks like Dwayne Wade, what are we like? Should art exist? It's so bad. It's so bad. If Dwayne Wade were a real one, they would have pulled that thing down and he would have just been like, no, for the exact reason that every other person here would say no. This statue is not even remotely close to what this should be. All right. Next up on the docket would be Paolo Banchero. Now, he doesn't have the highest ownership in comparison, but I see this one a little bit differently. We're showing Franz and Paolo Banchero like relatively similar in ownership. Banchero, Franz, Wendell Carter Jr., Suggs, they're all around 10%. I think Paolo Banchero looks a lot better than Franz Wagner does on DK. 8,800 for Paolo. I have him significantly more optimal. As I look at Orlando, I want Suggs and Banchero on DK, and that's basically all I want in this game. I don't have a single priority on the FanDuel end. No one that I would expect to get to a lot of. DraftKings is going to be Paolo Banchero and Jalen Suggs. Do you guys have any questions for Indy and Orlando before we keep it moving? My expectation is the answer is no. So we're going to go to the Washington Wizards are 7.5-point dogs in Atlanta. 233 total. If you are betting this game, I would want to bet on Atlanta. We're not really going to be in any position to talk about this game because of the Atlanta side. I think we could pretty easily talk about the Washington side, though. And we're going to start with the guy that's pulling massive ownership, at least for right now on DK, and that's going to be Bilal Coulibaly. He is shooting guard, small forward eligible. For reasons that don't make sense to me, he is 4,900. So best positional eligibility, one of the better price tags that you could really hope for. I am exceptionally low on him right now, to a point where I wonder if I accidentally typed in a number in one of his cells and made him look way worse because I don't have him grading out very well. And I kind of need to figure out why. So Bilal Coulibaly has a points prop of nothing. Nope. 12.5 juice to the under. I got him at 10.5. Look, is he a good play today? Yeah. Sub 5K price tag, 30 minutes a night. This is a guy that's going to look really good. Is he 34% owned good? Not to me. Why is Washington not here? Why did Bilal Coulibaly not show up here? Oh, that's FanDuel. Well, that's definitely why. Bilal. All right, why isn't that pulling through? Oh, do I have DraftKings coming from a different spot? That would make a lot more sense. Give me 1 second, guys. I have data that I'm not grabbing correctly. Where is that column? Yep. I was just grabbing data from the wrong place. We'll grab that. And we'll grab that. Ooh. And we'll grab that name. Okay, there we go. Yeah. I'm way lighter on Bilal Coulibaly's current ownership. I do think he looks like the best wizard. He does strike me as a little overrepresented. Like, if his points prop is around 12, I got it at 10.5. Do I expect to come up by a point? Yeah, for sure. He's going to look a little bit better in my sims later. But 34% feels a little high. I get it, though. Definitely a guy I want to take a shot on. Not super interested in Kuzma or Poole. They're fine. They're both 10% owned. I don't want a ton of Washington. The question marks really lie in Atlanta because we don't know the status of DeAndre Hunter. We don't know the status of Bogdan Bogdanovic. I have them both in. If everybody's in for Atlanta, this 7.5 line that exists is going to go away. They're going to be a couple points worse. And then every one of those little pieces of Hunter and Bogdan have a trickle-down effect. Like, if they're both out again, then we're going to go to Zach Risachet like we did yesterday. Now, if they are in, then it kind of mutes Atlanta a bit. But at the same time, they all look kind of good because they face Washington, and Washington is dreadful. So, like, Trae Young, Jalen Johnson, Dyson Daniels, to me, they're all like, 10%ers on DK. Daniels is way too expensive on FanDuel. Dyson Daniels is $5,600 on DraftKings and $6,900 on FanDuel. That is bonkers. Bonkers. So it's going to be really tough to get to Dyson Daniels on FanDuel, but on DraftKings, he looks really good. And then, Clint Capella's pulling a bunch of ownership on DK at $5,400. He's been starting, but not closing. He's playing about 22 minutes a night. Okongwu's playing about 26 minutes a night. So keep that in mind if you're looking at Capella, given his current starter status. But you could see it for Atlanta on the ownership side on DraftKings. 7, 9, 14, 10, 9, 13. Like, everybody from Atlanta is sort of getting 10% ownership. And I think that's the most important takeaway for this morning. You want to be paying close attention to the Atlanta Hawks, and they're going to have a lot of good plays today because they face Washington. But we need to know whether Bogdanovic or Hunter are playing today, because that will dramatically dictate how these rates move around for the Hawks. So they're hard to dig into now, but I want you guys to put a pin in them for the deeper dive and live before lock, because they are going to look good all day. You guys have any Wizards Hawks thoughts? Yeah, S&P. Like, I'm a big Bilal Coulibaly guy. Like, I think he's going to be good. I'm a fan of his moving forward. But, assist rate can only go so high on the Wizards if everybody else can't make the shots, too. And if Hunter and Bogdanovic are in, that's even worse. for Koulibaly. But definitely a guy that's going to be pulling a lot of ownership today and should be. All right, next up, game 3. A reminder, all of these games are on both sites. Any thoughts on the number 1 draft pick versus number 2 draft pick narrative? I have 0 thoughts on Risa Shea versus Sarr. Oh, McNasty, that's a good point. No, it didn't. It didn't. No changes. When does Joval get unleashed? The trade deadline when he ends up on a different team? All right, here's one for you guys that's pretty sobering to look at. Now, we're not going to be getting to a lot in this game. At least that's sort of my expectation. Milwaukee Bucks are 9.5-point dogs in Boston, 233 total. Now, we know Milwaukee is without Chris Middleton. Oh, we got ownership. Nice. I got the FanDuel ownership. I'm going to circle back quickly. So, FanDuel in, or DraftKings in, FanDuel in. FanDuel has a ton of ownership coming into Bogdanovic, so we're going to need to pay attention to that. All right, FanDuel game 1, highest owned guy was Nembhard at 11%. Nobody else is in double digits, so I'm going to ignore most of Indy and Orlando on the FanDuel side. And then for Washington and Atlanta, Kuzma, Poole, Koulibaly are all around 10% on FanDuel. 15% to Jalen Johnson, which looks right. 35% ownership is currently projected to Bogdanovic. If Bogdan's playing, he is chalk on FanDuel to a degree. Shooting guard, small forward, 5,300. I largely agree with it. He should be more owned. He's just too owned. S&P, you are absolutely right. All right. So the Bucks are lined up to get their asses kicked by the Boston Celtics. There is essentially no ownership coming into Milwaukee. Highest owned guy is Giannis at 4% on DraftKings. Highest owned guy on FanDuel is 11% to Bobby Portis. Now, Portis has a really nice price tag on FanDuel. I'm not really enamored with him. If I'm getting to anybody here, it's probably Giannis on DraftKings, but I don't really see much of anything on Milwaukee, DK or FanDuel, that you want to be getting to here. They're rolling into a really bad matchup. They aren't a very good team. So as I look at this, on FanDuel, it's really Giannis and nothing else. Or on DraftKings, it's really Giannis on nothing else. On FanDuel, it's Trent and Portis. But I don't really have a single bit of interest rostering Milwaukee Bucks today. I'm going to pause this show for a second and check out the massive super chat from Red Skittles. Said, here's some NBA money. That's it. Wasn't even looking for anything. Just a big old super chat from Red Skittles. We love having Red Skittles around. Friend of the program for sure. So I'm hoping that is on the back of some sort of really good win per Jake DeWitt. I guess you had a good finish in the Millie. If that's true, congrats. All right, let's talk about Boston because they're more interesting. We're going to start with the best play on Boston across both sites. That's Drew Holiday on FanDuel at 5,800. We have him currently projected for 17% ownership. I think that looks really good. That price tag is just a little bit... 4th place. Nice, Red Skittles. Nice. Good shit, man. Congrats. Drew Holiday's price on FanDuel is too cheap. There's a reason he's pulling that ownership, and he should. 9,700 for Jason Tatum on DraftKings, I might add, also looks really good. He's off to a fantastic start. He's only pulling 10% ownership. I had 10% optimal on him. So in terms of paying up, I like Jason Tatum in this game a lot more than I like Giannis Antetokounmpo. After that, it's kind of bleak. We're still waiting on the status of Sam Hauser. At all times, you can get to Jaylen Brown. I think Derek White is underrepresented at 6,900. Nothing too crazy, though. Again, like, this just isn't a game that I think that we're going to be targeting heavily. But Boston is just lined up to beat the hell out of them. I mean, I've got Boston projected for like 20 more fantasy points in the same game. That's a lot. That's a lot. So summing it up, FanDuel, or DraftKings, it's kind of like Tatum, and that's basically it. Derek White as a GPP play. Hold on. Hold the phone. Skittles. Bug Boy is your, like, actual friend? You are, like, personal human being friends with Bug Boy? Red Skittles, I used to like you. Take your $49.99 back. Ugh. In what universe would anybody want to be friends with Bug Boy? Does he have like family money that makes him more appealing? I don't get it, man. I don't get it. It's wild. Incredible. All right, let's go to game number 4. We got to keep this one moving. Red Skittles, I hope they're not yours. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Detroit Pistons, 7.5 point dogs in Miami. 219 total. Second lowest total on today's slate. One of 2 games sub 220. For the Pistons, oh God, but Tobias Harris has been stinky. And spoiler alert for today, Tobias Harris is 20% owned on DraftKings and 35% owned on FanDuel. Do I think Tobias Harris should be getting ownership today? Yeah, I do. I do think that he looks like the best Piston. I'm very nervous about his ability to do anything any longer. But he's going to be chalked today. And for all intents and purposes, I think he deserves it. Now, Tim Hardaway Jr. is getting 10% ownership on DraftKings. That's fine if you're looking for value. Cade Cunningham is getting no love, but I'm going to put this out there right now. 1% owned Cade on DK, 2% owned Cade on FanDuel. Way underrepresented. Cade Cunningham looks like a great GPP play today. He is a guy that I would want to get to be a little different in lineup construction. But if we're talking about the Pistons, Tobias Harris is really like the key name that we need to talk about. 6,100 on both sites. Power forward only on DraftKings. Small forward, power forward only on sorry, I don't know why I said only. Small forward, power forward on FanDuel. He should be getting a lot of ownership. I expect to be a little under the field here, on the FanDuel side at least. That's a little too much Tobias Harris for what this slate looks like. But I think Cade's getting slept on. He's playing massive minutes. He's good. This Pistons team is better than it was before, which I think makes Cade look better. So I like Cade in GPPs. Tobias Harris is the best value you're going to find on the Pistons. There's very little else that we should be talking about than Detroit. Now, Miami, also pretty unappealing. Again, second lowest total on the slate. Like, it's hard for this game to look good. Tyler Hero's pulling 12% ownership on DraftKings. Everybody on FanDuel is in single digits. I completely agree with that. So if you want to play Butler or Bam, it's fine. I do think Hero looks like the best option on DraftKings. I don't mind rolling the dice on Nikola Jovic. He is an unplayable dude on FanDuel at 5,600. He's a much more playable dude on DraftKings at 4,400. $1,200 cheaper than he is on FanDuel. So I like Jovic as like a sneak value play from Miami. I don't want to have a ton of exposure to Detroit and Miami because I think it's a bad fantasy game. Skittles, I love it, man. Thank you. Thank you. That's fun. You can be very generic with this response. I don't need your address or anything. What state do you guys live in? Are you in Texas? Is that why Bug Boy was jerking off Evan Carter? And if you want to put your whole address in here and dox yourself, that's fine too. I don't have anything else for Pistons Miami, and I'm guessing you guys don't either. All right, so let's get to the midway point now. Tennessee. Okay. Oh, I'm coming to your way to pick up my dog soon. Okay. I'll tell you what, if I'm ever bouncing around and I roll into YouTube birds, this is going to be fun. Cleveland Cavaliers are 2.5-point dogs in New York, 221 total. Obviously, this is two teams with at least solid defenses. What a twist that would be, Jake. What a twist. What a twist. All right. There is no ownership coming into Cleveland on either site. 2% is the high mark on DraftKings. 4% to Darius Garland is the high mark on FanDuel. I think Garland is a little underrepresented on FanDuel. $6,500. That's $700 cheaper on DK. But as I see it, I mean, Cleveland's one of the worst teams you can get to. If you want to roster Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen, do it. Do it. That's fine. They're just not going to project all that well. The opposite side of this game is a very different discussion, and we're just going to get into it now. 4 guys on DraftKings, 4 guys on FanDuel, all 10% or higher in ownership. We have $6,500 Mikal Bridges unowned on DraftKings, 16% owned on FanDuel. I think Bridges looks good on both sites. I think the ownership is pretty much right on FanDuel. I actually think he's underrepresented on DraftKings. Anunoby is 10% on both sites. I would make a case that he's a little underowned. Jalen Brunson is 20% owned on DraftKings at $8,600. 10% owned on FanDuel at $9K. Brunson looks really good. Towns on either site, $8,400 or $8,200, should be like 10% owned. Josh Hart on both sites is $6,100. Should be like 10% to 20% owned. He's 18 on FanDuel. So Bridges, Anunoby, Brunson, Towns, Hart. All 5 of those guys are pulling a bunch of ownership. All 5 of those guys were in and around 10% optimal for me. I think you have to pay close attention to the Knicks. The problem is it's a pretty tough matchup with Mobley and Allen. Like, especially with Dean Wade starting now. 3-4-5 for Cleveland defensively is really good. So this is a tough spot for the Knicks. But their entire starting 5 looks appealing. And then I am more than okay rolling the dice on Miles McBride. Oh, Bug Boy is awake. Bug Boy is awake. Bug Boy is the Meek Mill of this Meek Mill Diddy combo between Skittles and Bug Boy. Bug Boy's playing the role of Meek. What do you guys think about the Knicks? For real. Where do you guys land on that starting 5? Because they look really good. Do you guys have somebody that separates from the pack? What do you guys like from the Knicks? Bug Boy, that's fine. I'll take the guy that's good at DFS that rolls in here finishing 4th in the millie and drops a big one here. So that's fine. You can save yours for Laffy. I'll take Skittles being good at this. Big Shane Gillis fan in chat. Love to see that you like it. All right, so if Hart is out, where are you looking? And that's a good point. That is something that we do want to pay attention to. Josh Hart is questionable for this one. I mean, all of the starters immediately look a little bit better. Miles McBride looks a little bit better. And then I assume Dottier becomes like a down ballot guy. News God also has this one correct. You can save those super chats for Lofty one way or the other. They still end up incrementally in my pocket. So, womp womp. Sorry. Yeah, if Hart is out, the Knicks will look even better than they do now. If Hart is in, they still look like one of the better teams across the board. All right. We got to do one thing quickly before we keep moving. And it's this. $1 for the NBA core package. This deal ends tomorrow. Projections, ownership, boom bust, single lineup sim, regular sims, contest generator, whatever you're looking for on the NBA side, this deal goes away shortly. We started this one up for the beginning of the NBA season. The first week ends today. This will be the 7th day of the NBA season. So tomorrow's your final day to get back in with this NBA core package. $1 right now with the link in the description. All right, game 6. Denver Nuggets, who I told everybody I didn't like in the regular season, not off to the greatest start so far. This will probably fix that. They are 8.5-point favorites in Toronto. 218 total. This is also the lowest total on today's slate. And, oh baby, we got a lot of ownership coming into the Denver Nuggets. I think this is going to be the one that fixes them. We got to start with the most broken player for today, and that is Jamal Murray. Point guard, shooting guard eligible on DraftKings, point guard only on FanDuel. He is 40% owned on both sites. He looks like one of the best guys coming out of my contenders. He was my number one contender, I believe, on DraftKings and on FanDuel, and he should be. He is underpriced for this role. Toronto is terrible. I highly recommend you guys have your eye on Jamal Murray. He's one of the best plays today. If you're playing a cash game and you don't have Jamal Murray in your lineup, today should be the last day that you're playing cash games unless you want to get better at them, because he has to be in there. We are not done with ownership here, though. 10% to Jokic on DraftKings, 15 to Christian Brown, 10 more to Russell Westbrook, 20 to Michael Porter Jr., close to 10 on Aaron Gordon. Gordon is 20% owned on FanDuel. There's lots of love coming into Denver, especially on the DK side. And honestly, they deserve just about all of it. I have Jokic 10% optimal. Love him. I have Michael Porter Jr. 15% optimal. Love him. I have Aaron Gordon 12%. Christian Brown 11%. All these guys should be at least north of 10% ownership. Murray even more extreme. The one guy I don't want to get to is Russell Westbrook. 4,900 here, 12% owned. Maybe he just looks better against Toronto. This dude sucks. He sucked for years. And I've told everybody he sucked for years. Long before everybody was willing to say that he sucked, I might add. But he has been atrocious for this team. They are minus 37 in the 40 minutes that Russell Westbrook has played so far. He's 1 for 9 from 3. He's just awful. Awful. He's made one shot. So I would like to get far away from Westbrook. If Russell Westbrook is the guy you need today, I'd rather not have money. Now, on the FanDuel side, it's Murray and Gordon pulling the ownership. They were the only two guys to cross 10% optimal for me. Completely agree with it. Denver is the first high-level priority because of Jamal Murray. You know what's not a priority? Everything on Toronto except for Scotty Barnes on FanDuel. Now, I've been playing a lot of him. Hasn't been the most fun thing in the world. 8,600 on FanDuel. Small forward, power forward eligible. He's 25% owned on FanDuel. Next highest guy on either site is 8% to Jake Puddle on FanDuel. The only thing you want from Toronto is Scotty Barnes on FD. He was 10% optimal for me. I like the price. The ownership is bad. It's okay. I figure I'll have like 20% of him. I don't anticipate having anything else from Toronto. One thing we need to pay attention to for the Raptors, though, very important piece of this. RJ Barrett is questionable. We haven't seen him yet. If he can play today, I don't think that he just plays like 30 plus minutes. He's not really going to be a guy that we're looking at, but he does affect the rest of the team. So think about it like that. Scotty Barnes, FanDuel, priority. No other priorities from Toronto. Denver, Jokic, Murray, Porter, Gordon, Brown on DraftKings. I don't like Christian Brown on FanDuel. He's $1,200 more expensive than he is on DK. Don't play him there. Play everybody else. Denver looks awesome. Awesome. Keep your eyes peeled to Denver for sure. The Chicago Bulls, 7.5 point dogs in Memphis, 234 total, highest total on today's slate. A little bit of a pace up spot. Chicago's defense is truly terrible. Memphis should be good when their real guys are here. Lots of ownership coming into the Bulls, FanDuel in particular. Only Zach LaVine got to 10% on DraftKings, and I think he deserves every bit of it. 7,400 for Zach LaVine is too cheap in this spot. Not much else I want here. I'm going to continue to get to Josh Giddey. He's 3% owned on DK. I really like that in GPPs. But what we need to talk about is Chicago on FanDuel. 10% ownership to LaVine. Deserves it. 19% ownership to Kobe White. Largely deserves it. 10 to Vooch. Yes. 10 to Giddey. Yes. 20 to Patrick Williams. Patrick Williams is 5,500 on DK, 4,500 on FanDuel, $1,000 cheaper. Patrick Williams looks like a really nice value here, playing in that like 29, 30 minute a game range. And then actually, Ayo Dosunmu is also 12% owned. So we have 6 guys from the Bulls that are basically 10 or higher, with Kobe White and Patrick Williams both sitting at 20%. And I don't really disagree with it all that much. I expect to have more of Chicago than most teams. I don't love the spot, but their pricing on FanDuel is pretty advantageous, in particular that Patrick Williams piece. On DraftKings, it's really like LaVine and not much else. DFS temp, you had... Yeah, White went crazy on Friday. That was nice to see. Well, he looks really good again today here on FanDuel. A little bit less so on DK, $600 more expensive. Crispy, what's good? Now on the Memphis side, unowned. Nobody's getting to the Grizzlies. And really, probably no one should, unless Ja Morant doesn't play. Ja Morant is questionable tonight with right thigh soreness. If he happens to be out, you're going to end up getting quite a bit of Scottie Pippen Jr., is my guess. But these guys are not getting rostered. And for the most part, I don't see it either. 1% ownership is the highest of anybody on the Grizzlies on DK. 4 to Desmond Bane on FanDuel is the highest of any Grizzlies on FanDuel. So if I'm looking at it, these guys are like large field GPP plays, and that's about it. I think Bane looks the best. I think Marcus Smart is okay on FanDuel at 4,900. The Morant status is going to matter a lot here if we create anything new. I like Bane in tournaments. I don't really like much else from Memphis. Even in a really nice spot, I just don't think their pricing is helping. Do you guys have any Bulls Grizzlies thoughts before we keep it moving? And for the... How many people do we have in here right now? 350 people in the door watching this one. Hit the like button if you can. Run the bases. It's hard to say, really, because they just have so many bodies with Jaren Jackson back. Now that they have Jackson, Edie, Brandon Clark, I think that I'm light on Jay Huff's minutes. I don't think that he's playable, but it's going to be interesting to see what they're doing there. He can shoot a bit. He blocks some shots. I wouldn't be surprised to see Jay Huff be a bigger part of this team as we move forward, maybe at the expense of Brandon Clark. But for right now, what their front court looks like, it's hard for me to want to even look that direction. They need a trade. once they get healthy, like once Vince Williams gets back. I got to move my chair. Give me a second. There we go. Oh, that's so much better. Now I feel like I'm on the right angle. When I play video games in my chair, I lower it like a bump because it brings my eyes down a little bit more into the game screen. And then I forget to change it. And I felt like I was on a really weird angle there. That appears to be the case. All right, summing it up. On FanDuel, play all things Bulls. Play Zach LaVine on DraftKings. Probably don't play anything from Memphis. Rodney, Sim ROI. All right, Houston Rockets, 2.5-point favorites in San Antonio, 220 total. Q tag on Steven Adams doesn't really matter. No Trey Jones, no Devin Vassell for San Antonio. Only one guy is getting real love for Houston. That's going to be Fred VanVleet. 7,400 on DK, 12% owned. 7,300 on FanDuel, 20% owned. Showed up north of 10%. Optimal for me in both of my sims. Looks good. Definitely looks like the best option you can get to from Houston. I think Jabari Smith looks solid as a GPP option. I think, Amin Thompson on FanDuel has a little bit of interest. He's getting 8% ownership. I don't like too much here from Houston, but Fred VanVleet is the guy that I think everybody should be targeting. Dylan Brooks DK is worth like a sneak piece, but 0.64 fantasy points per minute is pretty bad. And another team that's really deep right now, too. Reed Shepherd not playing nearly as much as he should be. Hard to do it, though. So Fred VanVleet is the guy that you're looking for on Houston across both sites. San Antonio is very different. One of the best plays you are going to find on DraftKings today is $5,600 Jeremy Sohan, who showed up 16% optimal for me. He is a core cash piece today. And on FanDuel at 6K, he still looks good. He's 14% owned. I think Wemby is fantastic. 10-5 on DraftKings, 12% owned. 11-2 on FanDuel, 17% owned. But you can roster him at power forward too. And that completely changes the way that you can get to Wemby. So I like Wemby on both sites. I love Sohan today. And then we have Harrison Barnes as a very different play across both sites. He's 5,600 on FanDuel and unowned. I think that makes sense. He's 4,600 on DraftKings and 17% owned. Great value out of Harrison Barnes on DK. Similarly, Julian Champagnie looks like a decent value on DraftKings. I think Stephon Castle is worth a flyer on DraftKings. The San Antonio team looks pretty good on DK. On FanDuel, it's really Wemby and Sohan. A little tiny bit of Chris Paul, but I'm not a huge Chris Paul believer right now. It's really just Wemby and Sohan, but I want you guys to lock this into your old noodles. Jeremy Sohan is a priority today. What do you guys like for Houston and San Antonio? While you guys figure that out, I'm going to let you guys know what today's schedule is. And buckle up, because we have a never-ending supply of talent today. Talent? Content. Content is the word. Talent, too. Talent, too. So, 9 a.m., that's me. I'm on this show right now. Coming up next, Laffy and Matt Gajewski are going to talk NFL strategy for Showdown, Monday Night Football. You'll get the NHL strategy show at 2 o'clock. I will be back with Spags at 5 for the deeper dive. Eric and Bellman will be back for Live Before Lock at 6. And then Greg and Gajewski are back for Live Before Lock tonight at 7:15. No playback stream that I'm aware of tonight because of Monday Night Football, but that's what we've got going on for today in the Stokastic streets. 3 games to go. Final game on the DraftKings slate. The final 2 will be on FanDuel only. Big Chops. What kind of dog is it? It's a boxer. Utah Jazz, a truly dreadful basketball team, are 10.5-point underdogs in Dallas. 233.5 total. This is tied for the highest total on the slate. Only one thing is happening for Utah that is really worth a discussion, because everybody was sub 10% optimal. Everybody is sub 10% owned. except for Colin Sexton on FanDuel at 5,500. We're currently showing him at 30% ownership. He is not going to be 30% owned, guaranteed. But he is going to be the guy that pulls the most ownership on the FanDuel side. Whatever he's pulling, I kind of want to fade it. I'd actually be a little bit more interested in Keontae George on FanDuel than I would be for Colin Sexton. I think those guys should project relatively similarly. Any sort of ownership gap between the two puts me on George. Now, on the DK end, highest owned guy is Taylor Hendricks and Walker Kessler at 8%. It's about where they should be. Everything for Utah here is just filler. A last guy in, maybe. You don't want to prioritize it. You do want to prioritize the Dallas Mavericks, however, particularly on DraftKings. Now, 13% ownership coming into Luka at 11.3. Completely agree. And it's Luka Doncic, and it's the Utah Jazz. 13% ownership coming into Kyrie as well. He's basically 15% owned on both sites. I like it. And then we get to the more interesting people. 17% ownership is coming into PJ Washington on DK. He's 5K. Love the price tag. Looks like the ownership makes a lot of sense. Derek Lively is 24% owned on DraftKings right now. I don't agree with it. I don't think he looks that great. I'm a little surprised to see him be as owned as he is. What I want to do quickly is just look at his PRA. I want to see how far down I am in comparison to what's driving this ownership, because I don't have him projecting all that well. His PRA is 18.5 juice to the over. So let's just say it's 19. I have Derek Lively's PRA at 17.5. So you can make a case that I'm like a hair light, but I don't think that I'm so... Ooh, I have the hiccups. I don't think that I'm so light that he should be 24% owned. To me, it should be like in that 10% range. So I think Derek Lively's a little over-owned on DraftKings. Does look good. On FanDuel, the only real guy you want to get to... There's a hiccup again. Is Kyrie. I can't hold my breath and talk at the same time. I just realized that after I did it. Kyrie's the best guy you can get to on FanDuel, but don't sleep on Luka. Obviously, these hiccups are killing me. Why no Kessler love? He's fine. He's just not very good. For 5,500 on DK, he looks all right. He just doesn't play enough. Oh, these hiccups. All right, summing this game up. Colin Sexton looks interesting on FanDuel. Not much else looks interesting for Utah. Kyrie is your best player across both sites on Dallas. Don't be afraid to get to Luka, clearly. And then PJ Washington and Derek Lively do look like really good plays on DraftKings. All right, coming down the home stretch. All right, I'm going to take 20 seconds to hold my breath from these hiccups. Let's hope that worked. Final two games. It didn't work. Lakers, Phoenix, Portland, Sacramento. Neither one of these games are up on the DraftKings main slate. So this is a FanDuel only discussion. And right out of the gate, Lakers are 2.5 point dogs in Phoenix, 227 total. If I'm betting this game, I want to bet Phoenix. Jake, I wish I had 30 beers. Now, in this game, we're not really seeing any ownership. Not a single person on the Lakers or the Suns is north of 8% ownership. I am happy to get to AD. He's been exceptional so far. He's got power forward eligibility. Looks good. I think Austin Reeves and D'Angelo Russell work pretty well as GPP plays. I thought I did, Shooter. I think they're a little underowned. My favorite plays from Phoenix, there's no doubt about it. I want Devin Booker in GPPs at 8,400. He's only 4% owned. My expectation is this. And this is what happened to me on Friday, I think. I think it was Friday. I don't anticipate having a lot of the Lakers and Phoenix at lock because they don't look that very good. But my expectation is that when I swap after the 7:30 games and probably after the 8 o'clock games, I'll be swapping into a lot more AD, LeBron, Durant, and Booker to try to make lineups that aren't looking as good have a better chance of getting to the top by swapping to a lower owned guy. So at lock, I don't expect to have a lot of this game. Post lock after swaps, I expect to have a lot. B. Oswald wants to know why DraftKings is skipping late games. It's just an easier slate. Like, it's a more appealing slate when you have 9 games that lock within 90 minutes compared to 11 where you have an extra hour and a half after that 9th game. It's just cleaner. And then they can run a more interesting 2-game slate at 10 o'clock. Yeah, it's better for casual. It's better for casuals. The more late swap opportunities you can have, the better it is for you if you're willing to late swap. From a play standpoint, I wouldn't want DraftKings to drop anything. From just like a this is more fun concept, I would want them to drop 2 games. Same for FanDuel. But I'd rather have the late swap ability. Final game to talk about, Portland and Sacramento. Blazers are 12.5-point dogs in Sacramento, 227 total. 2 guys are getting love here. 1 from each team. Anthony Simons is 16% owned on FanDuel, and I completely agree with it at 6,600. Is the guy that can put up a big score. And if they're not going to play Keon Ellis, defensively it looks good for Simons. Love Simons. Looks like a priority. Kind of like DeAndre Ayton a little bit today too, but let's not tell too many people. I don't want Grant or Avdia, Kamara or Scoot. Not a lot of priorities here for Portland. The other guy getting a lot of love on the Sacramento side is 15% owned DeMar DeRozan. I think that's a little over-owned. He's 8,100. He looks fine. I'm more interested in Sabonis. I think Sabonis at 8% ownership is massively under-owned. And there's one big reason for it. For reasons that make no sense. Domantas Sabonis has power forward eligibility on FanDuel. He should be way more owned than 8% against Portland. The fact that you could roster him at power forward is night and day. If he were just center, 8% would make sense. Oh my God, what a horrible hiccup. We'll get rid of him after the show. I have him 13% optimal. Way, way, way easier to use than anybody else on Sacramento for me. I like him in that power forward spot. Fox is okay. Murray's okay. Monk's okay. Does the sim tool use the original lineup CSV for late swaps, or do we have to download and upload a new one once the contest starts? I mean, it'll use the original one if those are the same lineups. Think about it like this. The sim tool has to know what you have in on FanDuel. So if the final export that you had is what's in on FanDuel, then that's fine. Anytime you make a change after that, you got to get the new one. I already drank a full bottle, man. I'm trying, Starboy. All right, let's sum this up because we got to turn this one over to NFL strategy for Showdown. I'm just going to show you guys what the contenders are going to look like for today. So on DraftKings, these are my top 10 plays. This will sum up what I like the most. There we go. Murray, Sohan, MPJ, Anunoby, Aaron Gordon, Kyrie, Christian Brown, Jason Tatum, Trae Young, PJ Washington. Those are my top 10 plays on DraftKings right now. Don't get married to that, though. Things change. On FanDuel, my top 10 plays: Jamal Murray, Josh Giddey, Domantas Sabonis, OG Anunoby, Aaron Gordon, Anthony Simons, Tobias Harris, Fred VanVleet, Patrick Williams, and Alex Sarr. We'll see how this stuff changes as we progress through the day. Thank you guys for being here. This is a long one. These Mondays are tough. Tomorrow, we have 4 games. We will dig deeply into all 4. And then for the first time on this show so far, we will build lineups using the single lineup simulator. I'm excited to start using that on the show. We're going to build the goods tomorrow because we're going to have a lot of time. Good luck, everybody. Have some fun. Hit the like button. Talk to you later.